Welcome to Press Pass Live. It has been a little while. We have had a lot of action. Tons of stuff has taken on. I am your host, the commissioner here, Nate. And as always, I have our buddy here, Ozone. Ozone, welcome to the show.
What is up, gentlemen?
I can't believe how much stuff has taken place since the last time that we all spoke. I think our last show, we actually had Brady on the show. We were talking about playoffs, what was going to be, what was going to happen, and that has all come to fruition and actually got us all by surprise. The Atlanta Falcons are your season 69 Super Bowl winners. Quickly moved into the offseason re-sign phase, free agency, the draft, preseason's over, and week one is going to be ending today. It has been a whirlwind of about 10 days already.
Oh boy, it has. We had a pretty active free agency. I liked the stuff that happened there. I liked the draft. Everybody was pretty well involved in the draft, and then post draft, we had some festivities with the waiver wire. But it's all good. It's all. This is the exciting times for a lot of people in CFM. Building their teams.
But let's just hop right into it. Let's talk about free agency. Now, the way we do our player FPR here is that we've tried a couple of different things and kind of adjusted along the way, but any player that has 5 years or more, you either have to trade them or try to get them to sign a lesser contract. 99.9% of the time they don't. If you trade them, it's a little flaw in the game, but if you trade them, they will accept less from their new team. So you do see a lot of teams trading away their 5 year, either guys who are asking for 5 year contracts, or you can franchise them, or you have to just let them walk and go fight for them in free agency. So you did see a couple of big names out there this year. The first one was going to be Devontae Freeman from the Atlanta Falcons, who won the rushing title. So that is kind of the reason we have it set up like that, so that you will see a couple of big names and make free agency actually a thing that is pretty similar to the NFL, and that's what we had. So let's talk about our free agent winners and losers. Who did you think came out of free agency as a winner and as a guy who really spent his money well, or however you look at winning? Maybe it's a big name, maybe it's smart spending, maybe it's just going out there and filling a need. Who did you see as a winner coming out of the free agency period?
So, in my opinion, I think I'm not going to go with who signed the sexy pick necessarily. I'm going to go, like you said, who I think had the best free agency in this offseason. And granted, it's easy to point to that team because they had a lot of money. But you can have a lot of money and really screw things up in free agency. And this owner in particular didn't. To me, the word would go. I would say Colin with the Indianapolis Colts. He had he had a lot of holes to fill. He had a lot of money going into free agency, but every fill and every signing he had, not only did it make sense, it was very, very financially constant. And at the end of the day, he came out, I think, a big winner. I think one of the biggest weaknesses he had was the defense, and his defense is really shored up this year. He had a lot of openings, and he fixed that. And now Colin is sitting basically with the number 2 team. I don't know if you noticed, Nate, but he's the number 2 team overall. I think he's 88 or 89 points overall compared to where he came from in the offseason. That's huge in my book.
Yeah, we have to see, how these players work out. We've seen the Pats go that route where he picked up a lot of aging veterans that you were able to get on the cheap to fill that defense. And at times last year, it didn't help the Pats, but of course they were deep into the playoffs. And so Colin was playing red hot, and I do think that he did have a very good offseason. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. Maniac swapped from the Pittsburgh Steelers over to the Philadelphia Eagles. If I remember correctly, he is a fan. And, of course, he did go out there and get the big, sexy signing of Devontae Freeman. And here's why I kind of picked him as my winner. Is because his team was actually pretty close last year. I feel like he was starting to get the hang of what his team was going to look like in Pittsburgh. He took over an Eagles team that needed to just add a couple of little pieces here and there. And he did just that by adding Devontae Freeman to an already powerful offense that is led by Carson Wentz. But Devontae Freeman is your number one running back so far in our league. And he shows in week 1 that he was the guy to just kind of pick up the ball, even though he's not in Atlanta, and just keep running over in Philadelphia. And he comes out, he's the number one running back after week 1. And I just think that this team is starting to build a very dynamic offense to go with a very steady defense. Now, they are getting older on defense, but they do have a lot of speed and a lot of playmaking ability on that defense. So I went with the Philadelphia Eagles. I just felt like they just needed a couple little picks. And honestly, he did spend some money on Freeman, but it wasn't as crazy as I thought it might get up to be. You know, that guy was our leading rusher 2 years in a row. And I thought Atlanta would be in there. I thought there would be a lot more teams in that would drive that price up, but it didn't. And the Philadelphia Eagles will come out and be my winner for the free agent period in season 69. Let's transition, though, and talk about losers. Now, I got to be honest with you. I don't really have a quote-unquote loser. Now, I'm tempted. I was tempted to pick people like the Chargers, teams like the Chiefs, the Browns. These were a couple of teams that I thought would be bigger spenders out there in free agency, especially the Browns. I thought he was going to be a bigger spender, but you know what? He really changed his focus to really be draft heavy, and he had an excellent draft, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I've got to go with the Detroit Lions, and Junior and I have been together for a very long time. If I remember correctly, Junior was back in the PC days and followed us over to PS3 and then PS4. But here's why I got to get on Junior. Here's why I'm picking him as my loser. Not for anything terrible that he did as far as a signing, but he tried to play an old trick of the book that honestly just kind of got under my skin. So he had Matthew Stafford, who was asking for this really big contract. He said that the computer signing to a franchise tag. Never heard of that, but we did see 2 teams that said that this offseason. So you know what? Maybe the game is doing some crazy, stupid stuff. And so he asked if he could release Stafford so that he wouldn't be stuck with that contract. But he did it after a couple of days of us being into free agency, which was a little weird. But anyway, we were like, yeah, that's fine. We'll cut it. We'll clear your cap for you so you don't have to eat that big hit. But then he went after Stafford the second he cut him to try to lowball him and get his old quarterback back at a very low price. Matthew Stafford, I think, is like 88 or 92 overall, like somewhere in that range. He had traded for Brett Novak from the Buffalo Bills, who was a rookie in season 68. And I just didn't like that vibe. If you're going to cut a guy, cut him, be done with him, move on and go find somebody else. Don't try to this like, I'm going to cut him in the middle of a day and then go put a bid because nobody knew he was a free agent and let me pick him up on the cheap. So for that, sorry, Detroit Lions, you're getting my loser of the free agent period. I just didn't like that vibe.
So, okay, so I don't like the word loser, so I can't throw that out for this next one. But the free agent move I really didn't like, that I think we can do better than that, is my good buddy Pal Ducks. That is the sexy pick with Antonio Brown. I think he spent a little too much. I think he overpaid, and the fact that Ducks wants to use AB in the slot, there's about 100 receivers right now on the waiver wire that can meet that need as a slot receiver. I think AB got paid a lot of money on a 2-year contract to be a slot receiver. If it was a team, if it was a team that paid that money for him to play outside, that'd be different. I get that. But listen, Ducks has made the playoffs 2 years in a row. He hasn't had AB neither of those years as a slot receiver. So he can do that without him. He can make the Super Bowl without Antonio Brown playing in the slot. Why pay that much money? I don't understand that. I don't get that. I think that money from a GM standpoint could have been spent a little better in different areas on his roster. Is Antonio Brown gonna get the yards? Yes. Is he gonna get touchdowns? Yes. But again, like I said, he's done that without him before. I just think he overpaid on a slot receiver, looking at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, Dux definitely has this way of managing his cap, and he doesn't like to sit. He and I kind of feel the same way a little bit about this, that we don't like to sit on a lot of free cap for no reason for an off season, and so he will look for that veteran or two. He did it with Cleus Campbell last year and a couple of other players where he either got them on the cheap or he just spent the money that he had because he was going to give a 1 year deal. And I think that was his thought with Brown was, hey, I got a ton of cash. It'll be a 1 year deal. I'll get out at the end of the season, and I can bring this guy in to possibly make some plays. I was surprised that Brown didn't really draw more interest. So let's transition now. We've had free agency to look at trades. Now, this league really, over the past couple of Maddens, hasn't been a tremendous, huge trade league. I mean, I remember back in the PC days, it'd be nothing to see, 30 to 35 trades in an offseason. Everybody was super active, but really you'll only see a handful of teams be active in the trade period. So let's talk about good trades that you liked, trades maybe that you didn't like so much. What was something that stuck out to you this offseason?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing as far as trading goes that really stuck out was the Washington Redskins. This is an owner that came in, I believe, mid-season. So he didn't have a lot of scouting behind him. And he inherited a team that wasn't that great roster-wise. So early on, you could see what he was doing. He was getting rid of picks and players and late round picks, and he was trying to gain up on early round picks. Number one, like I said, he's a rebuilding team. He's on a rebuilding mode. So that makes sense to me. And number two, the fact that he came in mid-season kind of tells me he didn't have enough scouting, and all his scouting was kind of centralized and focused in the early rounds. And I got to give it to him. I believe he had 3 first-round picks, and he had a second. So if you look at the draft and how the draft played out, it really makes sense. He put all his eggs in one basket in the early picks, and that kind of showed. So the first 4 or 5 picks he had were really spot on, and then later through the draft, later in the rounds, he kind of fell off. So GM wise, I got to give it to him. I know he was very active. He got those picks and he got those changes, and he was able to pick based on his strength and what he needed to do for that team in this draft.
I'm going to talk about the Buffalo Bills a little bit. I think that he is extremely smart. He's always going to be the most active guy, especially in trades. Dux gets out there and really hustles and talks to people and finds deals that work out. And he really, even though he'll do some things that make you scratch your head, he'll do some things that are very smart. Last year, he spent an early pick that he didn't really have a need on his team, so he spent it on a quarterback. He flipped that quarterback this year for a higher first-round draft pick. It was actually a good deal for both of those guys. I wanted to talk about that deal. I thought that Bills and Lions trade was actually very good for both teams. The Lions really needed a quarterback. They're getting their young guy, Brett Novak, and the Bills got a first-round pick. Just a smart move for both guys. Here is the team that I didn't see what I wanted to see from, and that was the Cleveland Browns. I feel like he did some things this offseason that just made me scratch my head. He was offering big pieces that he could have got a lot for very late in the offseason, and then he'd quickly pull them off the board, and then he was offering guys that somebody would have gave him something for, and then quickly releasing them, and it just was a confusing trade-off season for me. I feel like that was a long-term trade project, rebuilding project, and in order to do that, you needed to move some of those pieces for something and get something out of them. Just like cutting that cornerback of his, that just wasn't a move that benefited his team. He put a guy out in free agency that he could have got something for, a third rounder, a fourth rounder, something, than just cutting that guy and being done with it. So that is going to be the one team that I was disappointed in. The one team that I felt like did a lot was just the Bills. They are always moving their roster. They're always gathering picks and moving picks. I do like the Washington Redskins and what they did, just like you said, but I really think that the Buffalo Bills did a lot of good things for their team and really was able to trade in a very smart way and do some very smart things. So that's how trades kind of worked out this offseason.
The thing with the Bills, and I love Ducks, like you said, he's a mastermind when it comes to trading, and this is something I need to learn more and be a little more better with. Uh, but the big thing with Ducks when he's dealing with trades, and that's like I said, I need to learn. I need to get a little better with that, and I think a lot in the league need to get better than that. He doesn't get married to players. And by that, I mean, he doesn't have a player that he's going to hang on and clinch on because it is what it is. He's like, his players are disposable. He wants guys that can play. He wants guys, he'll get rid of players to get a better deal, what he thinks is a better deal. He doesn't get married to the players. He's not going to hold on to a player week one, put him on the waiver wire, and then every week solicit him until the end of the season and then drop him. What Bills, he'll get rid of him one way or another, whether it's on the cheap or whether is market value. He'll get rid of him and make his team better that way.
Yeah, and I think that teams, especially rebuilding teams, could just pick up a few small things and integrate into what they already do with their team. Because if you're in a rebuilding project, you got to move some pieces, and I think Washington showed that. Now, it didn't work out for him in week one, but I do think he'll be a much better team. So let's go to what is arguably our favorite thing that we do here in the OMFL, and that is the OMFL draft. This was our 70th draft that we had ever participated in, and it was a ton of fun. We had a lot of guys on the draft show. I think we had up to 16 at one point, and that was a really big number. We did the pre-draft show. It just was a pretty good night, and there were some teams that did some really nice stuff. I really do like what the Cleveland Browns did this offseason. I know he had some help. I know you've been working with him and Vanderlei. Excuse me. I know the Steelers helped him a little bit. A couple of guys have kind of taken him under his wing and held his hand a little bit, way more than I would have. But it worked out for this draft because he really did have an outstanding draft. There were not many of his picks that I did not like. He drafted very smart for his team. He drafted playmakers. Where I worry about the Cleveland Browns is from past experiences of seeing what he had done to players that were already on his team. He just doesn't seem to understand how to develop players and how to put them in the best position so that he can increase and get their skills. He also confuses me a little bit with his quarterback situation. He keeps talking about the next year, and if this doesn't work, we're going to the next year. And so he's done a couple of things that made me scratch his head, but I got to give him props. He had an outstanding draft. He picked up a lot of pieces, especially on that defensive side of the ball. They're going to help his team and going to help him improve and be a playmaker that'll hopefully push him to get more than that 1 to 3 wins that he's been picking up every season. So I really like what the Cleveland Browns have done. And on the other hand, I can't hammer him too hard because he ended up missing the draft. I don't like what the Steelers happened in their draft. He was not able to be at the draft. I didn't know that. I couldn't because I was doing the draft show. I couldn't tell who was or wasn't around. But at one time, the computer drafted him 3 back-to-back quarterbacks, none of which should have ever been drafted. They were all B and lower, throwing power type of guys. I'm not saying that everybody's going to have a 92 power throwing arm, but you can't. It's going to be really difficult to win with a guy at 85 to 88 throwing power. And to see the computer do that to him, that can really hurt a draft overall stock. I know that he was happy with his early picks, but when you start losing those late second to early 4th round picks to just crazy computer quarterback picks, that'll hurt. So I don't like what the Steelers did, but I loved what the Browns did. What did you think about the draft? Who did you think did really well and maybe who struggled?
So I'm with you. I think I agree in saying that it's one thing drafting good players, it's another thing developing them. So, but we'll concentrate on the draft. And the way I value the draft, I really, especially in Madden, is how you do the first 3 rounds. I think that's pretty key. And everything else from there on, it's really speculatory, and hopefully it hits and your projections hit. So with that said, I'm going to go to the team. I'm going to start with the team that traded up to go to the number 1 pick. Now, picking up the number 1 pick, Houday and the Bengals, that's either going to put you in the doghouse or the penthouse. You know, you can really screw up, or you can really make out. I know early projections, everybody was talking about Stu Parr on the corner and being drafted number 1 overall, and I didn't like that pick pre-draft.
I didn't either. I got to be honest.
Pre-draft, I wasn't excited. Post-draft, I think Houday hit it out of the park. I mean, that was huge for him to have the marbles to move into the number 1 spot. Which, I got to be honest, I don't think I can go that route. It'd be very, very hard for me. I mean, I got to be really, really sure. He pulled that trigger. He got that number 1 draft pick. And not only did he get that, I didn't think that player that he was planning on getting was going to pan out. And he panned out big. I think that was a good pickup with the first overall team. I can live with Stu Parr being a number 1 overall player in this draft. And as the draft progressed as well, Houday hit his second and third picks. So I got to give it to Houday. He played very aggressive this postseason and getting that number 1 draft pick, and he capitalized on it. I know, listening to your show, I know I'll throw this out there. I know you were a little hard with your picks.
I was terrible.
And I don't think they were that bad. I'll just leave it at that. I think you did good. I think those picks were not bad. And it was one of those drafts that, and I don't think I've seen a draft like this in Madden, at least this year, where it reminded me of the stock market before the crash. It doesn't matter where you put money, you were going to make money. The first 3 picks were money, 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 money. It doesn't matter. You could have picked blindly, and guys were getting really good players. With that said, I got to be a little critical with one of the teams that you were really, really praising during the draft. And that's going to be the Titans.
Oh my goodness, that was the one team I was going to say that was another draft I didn't mention that I felt like was really, really good. So I'd love to hear what you didn't enjoy about it.
So here's my issue with the Titans. I think they got first. I think they had 2 first rounders and they went offensive line. Yes, they got good offensive linemen, but now we've evolved. We're 3 seasons into this thing. I know Titans. He's a smart guy. I know he can do better than that. Number 1 overall pick. What I had in my books pre-draft, and he kind of proved it post-draft as well. This draft was full of defensive and offensive linemen. I don't think you go offensive lineman with your number 1 pick, especially the number 8 pick. Now, if that was your need, I get it, but I would have liked to see a little more work in trying to get out of the 8th and maybe move in the middle rounds or maybe later rounds in trying to get that offensive lineman. He would have been there. He would have been on the board. And if he wasn't, like I said, pre and post snap showed that this draft was heavy offensive linemen and defensive linemen. So now I'm being a little critical and nitpicking because there weren't a lot of bad drafts, but from a GM standpoint, that's the only thing I can kind of see and kind of pinpoint. You have the number 8 pick, either go big on that or try to move back in the draft and try to get that offensive lineman in the mid rounds and trying to get more value overall. To me, being in the draft is getting value on a player more than anything else.
I can't argue that. Those offensive linemen are not sexy picks, and you do present a good argument. I also like what your Tampa Bay Bucks did. I like what Vanderlei's Ravens did. I thought a lot of teams did well. There were no teams that really just did terrible. I like what Washington did with his pick. So it just was an overall really solid draft for everybody. Which brings us to week 1. We went through the preseason, allowed guys to play that week 4, get their team set to 53-man, fill their practice squads if they needed to. And then we moved into week 1, and we'll be advancing into week 2. Probably, I think the last game should be starting right about now if it hasn't already started. So let's talk about predictions. Now, we did not all predict the Atlanta Falcons to make it to the Super Bowl. We did pick the Buffalo Bills, and then even in that game, we definitely wouldn't have seen the Atlanta Falcons coming out of that with a win. And he actually had to fight super hard. So let's get back in the prediction game. Let's talk about the AFC. Let's just go through the AFC one by one. We'll take it division by conference and then division by division. So let's start in the AFC East and talk about the Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins, New York Jets. What do you see happening in the AFC, and who's going to win that division?
I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the same song and dance. As far as the AFC East goes, I think New England can give Ducks a run for his money. It all depends if New England's going to be up there and they're ready to compete this year. Miami's a really, really good team. I gotta tell you, they got a really, really good owner. He knows what he's doing. I just don't think the pieces are in place yet. He's a 76 overall team, and he's going up against two teams that are in the 86. Again, this is going to be all him and trying to outcoach their opponents, and he's got some really tough business to do in there.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I think this is Buffalo's division to lose. I think the AFC is Buffalo's to lose, to be honest. New England will push him, like you said, and I am very intrigued by Miami. I want to see Miami push New England and push Buffalo and make them respect him and respect his game and stop being at the bottom half of this division. He needs to push for the top half of this division. He needs to push Buffalo and New England to their limits and force those teams to really look at how they build their team and to take Miami serious. But this is going to be Buffalo's division to lose. Let's move over to the AFC North. You got Cleveland, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati. I personally like the Baltimore Ravens in this division. Now, this has been both Pittsburgh and Cincinnati's back and forth throughout the years here. It's good to see Cleveland pick up a win in week 1. They've got a lot to show me. I will not be a believer unless they, really push an 8-8 season or greater this year. I think Cleveland will be in the bottom half of this division. I think this is going to be Baltimore's division to win, though. He's been building this roster now for over a season and a half. He's constantly moving the bottom half of that roster. He's constantly tweaking his game. Pittsburgh is a little bit of an unknown. He missed the draft, but he was a little active in free agency. A little bit of an unknown. Very good player, but we just don't know what to expect from that team. And Houday, I love him. He's one of the best owners that we have here. But a guy, because of just his personal life stuff that's going on, it's going to be an up and down team. Maybe a team that gets on a red hot streak and wins 3 to 5 games, but also a team that can quickly go on a losing streak and lose 3 to 5 games just as quick. Baltimore, I'm picking you because you're the most steady Eddie of this division, and I think they're going to win it.
Yeah, I think this division is going to be like the AFC West of last year. I think they're going to cannibalize themselves internally. I think the Browns have gotten better. Houday is no pushover. And Baltimore has the roster and the team to be in that division, in my opinion, like you said. But the fact that you have a team that wasn't very, very good last year and they've gotten better, not only roster-wise, but gameplay, and that being the Browns, I think anything can happen at this point now.
We're going to move over to the AFC South. I think that this, in my opinion, is the best top-to-bottom division throughout the OMFL. You have the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Tennessee Titans. Who do you see coming out and winning the AFC South?
This is going to be Colin and the Colts all the way. He's built the roster. He's got the roster. He's got the team now. It's game time now. You got the second best team in the league on roster. Let's see some W's. Let's see some performance. I am putting the Colts winning the AFC altogether. So I have really, really high hopes for this team.
I am not on the Colts bandwagon as you are. I do like Colin. I like what he's doing, and he is more of a better player than he was early last season. do look for the Houston Texans to turn things around, but I think just because of the new baby, that's going to be a tough thing to keep going throughout the season. Jacksonville, look for basketball to wrap up for him and his daughter, and he's going to be able to concentrate on this a whole lot more. Look for that team to bounce back. Even though the Tennessee Titans lost, I know that they were not your favorite draft that happened this past offseason, but I do think that Tennessee Titans are also going to be a top team. They have Mariota. They know how to play well. He started out as 0-1 last season, I should say, and still bounced back and won that division. Jacksonville disappointed me in week 1. I think that he is not able to focus the way he wants to. He plays in like 75,000 leagues and coaches basketball for his daughter. Give me the Tennessee Titans. I hope that the Colts prove me wrong, but I like the Tennessee Titans to come out of the AFC South. Then we're going to move to the AFC West. A division that for me is confusing because all of these teams can play well and then disappear at times. And probably the quietest division. None of these owners are super duper talkative and super duper like doing team stuff and articles and things like that. But Denver, Kansas City, Oakland, and San Diego, I like out of the AFC West to be Denver. I just think that they are the most steady team. They just know how to win with that team, and they just, no matter what happens, they continue to win, and they continue to pile up wins, and then you get at the end of the season, and he's sitting there with 9 to 11 wins and at the top of the AFC West again. But this is a fun division to watch because I think that the Chargers will be better. Oakland's been down as of late, but still a very young roster, a very good roster, and the Kansas City has been very, very steady. Look for them to push Denver, but Denver's going to come out top of the AFC West. How do you see the AFC West breaking down?
Yeah, this is a division that really beat themselves up, every year. Looking at the rosters, KC has the best team out of that division. I was a little concerned with them losing Jamal, but with that said, they came in week 1 and they didn't miss a beat. I really think KC is going to be the cream of the crop by season's end, and I think San Diego is going to be there. Meathead has failed me time and time again, over and over again last season, but I really think he's got a roster to compete now with the other two teams, with the Raiders and the Broncos. So I think he can be spoiler in there as well.
Give me your 2 wild cards out of the AFC at the end of the season.
You got to go. I'm not even going to mention team-wise, but I think you're going to go. One of them is going to be out of the West. The other one is going to be out of the South and the Texans.
I got to stick to what I've seen and what I know. I got to take the New England Patriots, or I'll just say the AFC East. I'll go your route. I think that one of the wild card teams will come out of the AFC East. And then I'm going to go ahead and take the Indianapolis Colts. I think that they will have one of the wild cards. So either Miami, New England, and Indianapolis, 2 of those 3 teams I think will take it AFC wild card and be in the playoffs and roll in deep and see if they can take it. Let's move over to the NFC, I should say. We're going to look at the NFC East first. You got the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Redskins, and the New York Giants. How do you see the NFC East working out this season?
I think this is going to be all Dallas again. Unfortunately for those guys, Dallas still hasn't missed a beat off their roster. They still have a really good team. And you look at the other teams in that division, and they're really trying to play catch-up. I know Romo Maniac is putting a good team in Philly. I'm very, very curious to see how that plays out. But as of right now, week 1, getting into this season, I got to go with Dallas.
I'm going to go the Philadelphia Eagles. I've cashed in the savings. I've bought a bond. I'm on the bandwagon. I like the Philadelphia Eagles just because they found that big star running back that they needed. That offense is going to be balanced. I do like Dallas. I do think Washington's going to be better, and I think the Giants are just an underrated team that no one really pays attention to, but he'll also be extremely, extremely good. But I like the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go over to the NFC North. The Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, a division that was really down last season, but I think will be much, much better this season. I am liking the Minnesota Vikings to come out of this one. I think that they will win. I know they're 0-1, but I do think that they'll be a much better team. I know we've had some discussions with Chicago owner and just kind of getting on the same page. I know you've had some talks with him to help him. Other guys have talked to him to help him. So we're just all just got to get on the same page. I do think they'll be a better team. I love his activity. I love his Twitter account. I love everything he's doing. But this is all about the Minnesota Vikings. How do you see the NFC North coming out?
Even though they got a beatdown in week 1, I'm going to go with Green Bay Packers. I think they got the team, they got the roster. The Vikings are up there too. I can't dismiss them, but I got to go with Green Bay on this one.
Let's go look at the NFC South. Now, I know you're not going to want to talk about your team, and I know the Super Bowl champions are over there, but I think that the Carolina Panthers will be always around that 8-8, 9-win mark, maybe even 10 wins if we can pick up some and sneak some. Look for the Saints to be improved. They went out there and they got their quarterback for the future. Much like that cornerback in the first round, I didn't think quarterbacks were worth it, but you know what? He stood in there, he stayed steady, and he got the guy that he wanted, so look for them to play better. But I think, of course, this is a very top-heavy division. Carolina could be the surprise, the question mark, but you can't discount Atlanta. I think losing that Devontae Freeman is going to hurt his offense. I like the Tampa Bay Bucks in this division. I just think that you play super steady. You cause everyone who plays you to play off of their game. They play defensive game. And if Jameson can play the way he played against me in the playoffs, you're going to win a ton of games. You'll be 11 to 13 win team this season. I like the Tampa Bay Bucks to come out of this division.
Yeah, I got to go with the Carolina Panthers. I mean, they got – this is the shocker pick, I know. But listen, this is the best team on paper, on roster. They're 91 overall. We all know goofy stuff happens when you're playing 90 overall teams. DB, buddy, pal, you got everything in place right now. Just go on a roll. That's all you got to do.
I did try to trade for Cam Newton, but that was just a flirtation thing for him. It would have been awesome to put Cam Newton in red and black, and I would have made that happen in a second. Gave up what I need to give up. Even though I do love Jimmy, to have a guy that could get out of the pocket from time to time would have been nice. Jameson made me pay for that whenever I played for your Tampa Bay Bucks this past off-season, or postseason, I should say. But he and I are in talks. We've got some 5-year players that we might swap. So I do like Carolina, but I think that you're always just playing Mr. Humble, and Tampa Bay is going to win that division. NFC West, you got the Los Angeles Rams, my Arizona Cardinals, the Seattle Seahawks, and the San Francisco 49ers. San Fran's always going to be a better team than his record, but I've been saying that for 2 seasons. So you know what? At the end of the day, you are what your record says that you are, and he's got to show me something. Seattle is a very, very good team. This division is all going to be about Seattle unless the Los Angeles Rams can finally put it all together. That is a very talented team. If he can put it together, okay, he can make me 100% wrong. But this is going to be about the Seattle Seahawks. Look for them to win this division.
Yeah, like you said, Seattle is a really, really good team. I expect a little more from the Rams this offseason and trying to get better. And I didn't see that. So to me, the Rams are still on the bottom of the division. San Francisco is still trying to get their roster together. So it really comes down to the Cardinals and Seattle. Yes, Seattle is a really good team, but at the end of the day, I do think you have the better roster and the better game plan to come ahead in the West.
I can't argue with you about the Rams in San Francisco. Just thinking back, since this is kind of our post-off-season show, I do think that those are 2 teams that could have done more to increase their roster. I hear you that teams like San Francisco need time to rebuild their roster, but I think Vanderlay's shown it with the Ravens. You don't need time, you just need activity. And the San Francisco 49ers are never very active and pretty much just shows up to play his games. And that just shows when you can't build your roster. And it just makes me scratch my head a little bit. So where do you see, give me your 2 divisions that you see a wild card coming out of. I personally like the NFC East, and I also very much like the NFC South. I think that those 2 divisions have very, very, very good teams. NFC West could be in that discussion also. But I just think that the NFC South and NFC East are going to be where the wild card comes out of.
Yeah, and I think this year it's going to be between the North and the West. I think it's going to depend between you and Seattle if you can keep up with the rest of the league, and get wins despite what happens within your division. And then I really have Green Bay and Vikings really, really close together. And again, it's going to come down to those guys winning their games outside their division.
Yeah, I think no matter how this breaks out, this is going to be a very intriguing season. We've got some new owners that joined us at the late of the last offseason as we kind of rolled into the postseason and got ready for the offseason. So there's a couple of question marks of guys we just don't know a lot about, such as the Giants, such as the Steelers, such as even the Bears to some point. Which kind of brings me to my last point. This is not on our agenda, but I do want to spend a couple of minutes here. We've had some very interesting discussions, especially with you and I. One of the things that I respect about guys who are very active is, and this is just my personal point of view, kind of in life, is if I am in the, don't criticize, don't give me help, don't. Okay, I'm struggling here. Let me put it this way. I hate painting. Painting is the worst, all right? Something about stepping into a white room and knowing that you have to paint walls is just terrible. But I can do it. You just leave me alone. I can focus, put on some music. I can get things like that done. But what drives me nuts is that person that comes and sits and watches you paint and wants to have a conversation with you while you work. That just drives me insane. Look, leave, let me work, or pick up a paintbrush and help me paint. We can talk while you do that, but don't sit there and watch me work. So there's something about being in the trenches with someone, right? Somebody that's got some dirt on their hands that I just have a lot more respect for whenever they have suggestions. And so you and Vandelay and even other owners have had some discussions this offseason. And the reason I'm kind of bringing this up is because we did have some discussions with the Bears while I was gone and out yesterday. And you tried to help him. I know you're very good about that, but just trying to be helpful and talk with guys. Again, that's why I love voice chat, being on Discord. That's why I love when guys come on podcasts, because you could just take type out of context. You can read it in your own tone. You can put your own inflect on stuff. But when you get on voice, you can have a voice-to-voice conversation and see that this is just another human being on the other end, and we're just trying to figure this out together. And so we did look at a couple of big things. Both Brady had some discussions, and the Redskins owner, Manny God, had some discussions. You and Vandelay had some discussions, and some we took and some we did not. And at the end of the day, we're just all trying to be on the same page here. But it came back up over the weekend because of the tight formations that we had discussions about and decided that just didn't fit for right now. But we did have some discussions with the Bears where they were maybe leaning a little too much on that. Now, I'll just say up front that I feel like our majority rule covers a lot of these gray areas. That if there is not a black and white, if I'm running with my quarterback 15 times, that's black and white. I mean, you can look at the rules and say, hey, you broke a rule. But if there are some gray areas, as there is with any game, I think that majority rule should cover that. You should not be doing anything a majority of the time. So the discussions with the Bears were that his tight end ended up leading his team in receptions. Not a big, huge problem for one game, because sometimes that's just how the game plays out, and you may lean on that weapon heavily. But it becomes an issue when you see it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, or 6 games out of 10, or whatever that number is, because tight ends tend to be easier to hit and easier to target, just because it is a game and it does have its flaws. And so brings us to the discussion where I want to allow you to have your opportunity to share your point of view. Now, we shared this with me, and we had some discussions offline, but I think it is important that the league as a whole, because I do agree with you that guys should not be doing something a majority of the time. And so if we are leaning on tight, closed formations a majority of the time, a majority of third downs, a majority of when I need a big player outside run, that is a massive, massive issue. That's why that rule is there. Again, we've had the 7-page rule books that people said they had to print out and lay in front of them, and that's not what I want, but I also don't want to have a league with no rules. So I want to give you a few minutes just to share your point of view about closed and tight formations. I think it's important to let guys hear that because I am a big opponent of we should not be doing that a majority of the time. And I think it'll help a lot, especially new guys who are just trying to learn how to play strategic here, be able to adjust their game accordingly.
Okay. Okay, I didn't expect that, but okay. Well, I can go with that. So I don't want to get too down in the weeds, because at the end of the game, it is a game. Now, some of us play it a little more strategic and try to implement more X's and O's than others. I get that, but the problem that's always existed. Now, it's gotten better through the year. I wouldn't say through the years. It's gotten better this year. Is with the tight and the closed formations. The problem comes in where the defense, we don't have the tools on the defensive side of the ball to deal with some of those formations. Now, with that said, the biggest problem with those formations is that the defense they do really bad alignment versus the offense. So I know we have the best way I can explain it. I know we have the tight end rule, and the tight end rule doesn't matter where we play it from, whether it's a pro set, an I form, or whatnot. We all know there's a tight end rule that the league has because they're easier to hit. So the best way I can explain the tight and closed formations is by playing those formations. You're moving your wide receiver in tight end alignments. So to me, that rule should kind of basically apply the same way the tight end rule that we currently have applies with those formations as well. Now, again, a lot of people use them. If you saw the Madden Championship, those guys use those formations for a reason. Because they're too successful. There's a reason they work. And there's a reason why we all want to go to them, because they work too well. In real life, tight formations and closed formations they're situational down formations. Short, third and short, second and short, you're trying to get that first down. What it does, it compresses your set. So the other good way you can use those formations, it would be the red zone. In Madden, I'll be the first one to admit that Madden, I've gone through the playbooks this year, and there's maybe 20 plays that are really true red zone formation plays. But when you throw in the tight and the closed formations, now pretty much every play in those formations is a red zone play because it compresses the field. So instead of going vertically, you're going out. But that's kind of like the point I was trying to make when we had our discussions. And I know, one of the examples was, why do I keep on hitting the tight end? Why do we get so many receptions? Well, part of the reason is you are playing those tight formations. It wasn't, and I don't think anybody's doing maliciously or, nobody's trying to exploit the game, but it's just that exploit that, to me, I call it an exploit that exists currently in the game.
Yeah, and I wanted you to share that because we're not throwing that suggestion away. It is not. We're not done with it. We're going to keep looking at it. Again, it's just we're all on the same page, and we're all trying to get better, and we're all trying to make this as fair as possible. And it's funny because you and I, it's just this is why I want to always keep thinking about all this, and we're not throwing it away. And I don't stop testing it. I don't stop looking at it because it's funny. Out of this discussion, I feel the same way about Cover 2 Zone in all of its many incarnations. And I know that you don't feel that passionately about Cover 2 Zone. And so it's funny that we both feel the same way about something on opposite sides of the ball and both have a hard time seeing it for each other. But you do present a very compelling argument. And I'm telling guys now that you need to listen to this and you need to just use that majority rule. And we will continue to look at Ozone's suggestion and continue to look at other suggestions as guys have them. It's always a balancing act between one-off conversations with owners who are abusing stuff and actually implementing a rule, because it doesn't make me happy to hear guys say that they have to print things out and read while they're playing a game. Like that's too deep. So it's a balancing act, and we're going to figure it out, and we'll just keep growing, and we're going to keep getting better, and before we know it, we'll be in Madden 18, and there'll be a whole new set of crap that we got to figure out and get right. So we're going to
and hopefully, with that said, and I don't, I'll go out and say it's only a problem when this becomes a base offense, and we saw it last year a couple times where, some teams relied on those formations a little too much. But if you're using them on situational downs, I don't think it's as big of a problem as if my entire offensive scheme, this is what I'm coming out on first down. I think that's when I think this becomes a problem. Sometimes sometimes in everything in life, we're kind of our own worst enemy. But
yeah, I feel the same way. That's why we had to do the shotgun thing, because last Madden guys just wanted to run a base shotgun offense, and we don't want that. So yeah, we're going to keep looking at this. All right, it's not over. We'll keep discussing it. Just let's mix it up, fellas. Let's get out there. We had a discussion about how you call your plays. I want to see guys call their plays out of the way you normally call them. You pick the formation, you pick the play. I think that play type can be used in special occasions. If you like, there's this play that you want, but it's quicker to find it in play type than it is to search through your playbook. I'm fine with that, but I get weary. We had to ban coach suggestion because it's a broke system. It makes you call the same 4 to 6 plays the entire game, and I worry that play type will end up doing the exact same thing. That it'll just end up putting you in the same formations and the same types of plays every single time, and that's not what we want. I want a guy to out-call a better game than the other guy because they learned their playbook, they knew where stuff was, and they just had a better game plan. So we're going to save week 1 for our next show because we'll have week 1, 2, and maybe even 3 by the time we get to the weekend, and we can also start to see some stat leaders. Hey, if you get a chance, though, make sure you look up Maniac's post in the league media forum. He is taking screenshots and a little interview from coaches to talk about their draft picks. This week, we'll also do a hot seat with the Miami Dolphins owner, and we're going to knock out some personal team stuff. There's lots of team blogs about their drafts, about their free agent additions. I'm going to try to do mine later today. So lots and lots and lots of great stuff. Ozone, thank you again for giving me your time and being on here. Sooner or later, you got to drag your buddy Vandalay to come be a special guest. We had Brady on. We got to get Vandalay on here. I know he has a voice, so we got to make him use it from time to time.
For sure.
For Ozone, for all of the board, for all the leadership here in the OMFL, thank you guys for tuning in. Ozone, we'll see you later this weekend, buddy.
You got it. Good luck to everybody this season. Let's have a great season and go from there.